Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Govinda Jaya Jaya, Gopala Jaya Jaya. Govinda Jaya Jaya, Gopala Jaya Jaya. Radha Ramana Hari, Govinda Jaya Jaya. Radha Ramana Hari, Govinda Jaya Jaya. Govinda Jaya Jaya, Gopala Jaya Jaya. Govinda Jaya Jaya, Gopala Jaya Jaya. Radha Ramana Hari, Govinda Jaya Jaya. Radha Ramana Hari, Govinda Jaya Jaya. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Gaur Premanandi.
Paramahamsa Parivrajacaka Stotra Satish Divine Grace AC Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacaka Stotra Satish Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati शील गोस्वामी महाराज की जय, अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय, नामाचार्य की जय। प्रेम को श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोपिनाथ श्याम सुंदर राधारमण की जय।
You have the thing there.
You want the other one? This one's kind of heavy.
I'll take it. Take it off. I'll just take it. I don't want either one.
Okay.
Thank you. Beautiful.
Some water.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Sarvabhauma Dasa Kunjabihari Gopijana Giridhari Yashodanandana Vajanandana Yamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Gopijana Vallabha Giridhari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajrakacharya Hastatatora Shata Sri Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajrakacharya Hastatatora Shata Sri Srimad Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki.
Please forgive me, but I'm going to go home and listen to my hearing aid
Okay.
until it comes through clear. Okay?
Thank you. We're reading today from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 9, text number 25, entitled The Passing Away of Srila Bhishmadev. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasvatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Nasta Praeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamasloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistaki Sutuvacha Yudhisthirastad akarnya Shayanam Sharapanjari Apritchad Vidhan Dharman Rishinam Chanushrinvatam Sutuvacha Yudhisthirastad akarnya Shayanam Sharapanjari Apritchad Vividan Dharman Rishinam Chanushrinvatam Sutuvacha Yudhisthirastadakarnya Shayanam Sharapanjari Apritchad Vividhan Dharman Rishinam Chanushrinvatam Sutuvacha Yudhisthirastadakarnya Shayanam Sharapanjari Apritchad Vividhan Dharman Sutuvacha Yudhisthirastadakarnya Apritchad Vividhan Dharman Rishinam Chanushrinvatam Sutuvacha Yudhisthirastadakarnya Shayanam Sharapanjari Apritchad Vividhan Dharman Rishinam Chanushrinvatam. Managees. So, Shayanam Sharapanjari Apritchad Vividhan Dharman Rishinam Chanushrinvatam. Word for word. Sutuvacha. Sri Suta Goswami said, Yudhisthira, King Yudhisthira, taught that Akaranya, hearing, Shayanam, lying down, Sharapanjare, on the bed of arrows, Apritchad, asked, Vividhan, multifarious, Dharman, duties, Rishinam, of the rishis, Cha, and Anushrinvatam, hearing after. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Suta Goswami said, Maharaj Yudhisthira, after hearing Bhishmadev speak in that appealing tone, asked him in the presence of all the great rishis about the essential principles of various religious duties. Please repeat. Suta Goswami said, Maharaj Yudhisthira, after hearing Bhishmadev speak in that appealing tone, asked him in the presence of all the great rishis about the essential principles of various religious duties. Did someone read the purport?
Bhishmadev, speaking in that appealing tone, convinced Maharaj Yudhishthir that he was very soon passing away. And Maharaj Yudhishthir was inspired by Lord Sri Krishna to ask him of the principles of religion. Lord Sri Krishna inspired Maharaj Yudhishthir to ask Bhishmadev in the presence of many great sages, indicating thereby that the Lord's devotee, like Bhishmadev, although apparently living as a worldly man, is far superior to many great sages, even Vyasadeva. Another point is that Bhishmadev at that time was not only lying on a deathbed of arrows, but was greatly aggrieved because of that state. One should not have asked him any question at that time, but Lord Sri Krishna wanted to prove that his pure devotees are always sound in body and mind by dint of spiritual enlightenment. And thus, in any circumstances, a devotee of the Lord is in perfect order to speak of the right way of life. Yudhishthir also preferred to solve his problematic questions by asking Bhishmadev, rather than ask anyone else present there who was seemingly more learned than Bhishmadev. This is all due to the arrangement of the great wheel carrier, Lord Sri Krishna, who establishes the glories of his devotee. The Father likes to see the Son become more famous than himself. The Lord declares very emphatically that worship of his devotee is more valuable than the worship of the Lord himself.
Hamagyan Tivarandasya Giranjana Shalakaya Chakshurvilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayamrupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nivishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarane Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Shrimate Tamal Krishna Goswami Niti Namane Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. The verse again. Suduvacha Yudhisthirastad Akarnya Shainam Sharapanjare Hapichad Vividhan Dharman Vishinam Chanusrinvatam. Sri Goswami said, Maharaj Yudhisthira, after hearing Bhishmadev speak in that appealing tone, asked him, in the presence of all the great rishis, about the essential principles of various religious duties. So up until this point, Bhishmadev was speaking about pure devotional service, about surrendering to the Lord, chanting the holy name, and he was surrounded by all the Pandavas and the remaining people in the family after the great battle of Kurukshetra. So far Bhishmadev has been speaking, but Maharaj Yudhishthira in this verse is asking him to speak about the essential principles of various religious duties. So Maharaj Yudhishthira, first he was very devastated after the battle, feeling responsible for so many people dying and being killed, and then he approached Bhishmadev, and Bhishmadev's been preaching pure devotional service But Maharaj Yudhishthira realizes he has to be the king now. He has to lead the people. So for that reason he has to know about the religious principles, which amounts to varnashram. So varnashram, Srila Prabhupada said that he only really finished 50% of his mission, that he didn't really completely set up varnashram in ISKCON. So we might ask, why is that? You know, if it's so important, why did Prabhupada leave 50% of his work undone? Well, in one sense, it's not really as important as pure devotional service. So Prabhupada, you know, did a wonderful job of preaching, writing his books, making devotees all over the world, preaching the principles of Bhagavad Gita, which the highest teaching of Bhagavad Gita is Sarvadharmam Pratyajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja. Just surrender to me and I will relieve you of all sinful reactions. So Prabhupada was teaching the highest from the very beginning. And the Amala Purana is the Srimad Bhagavatam. When Prabhupada came to America, one of the only things he brought was some trunks of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1. And this was the Bhagavatam, right from the very beginning. It kicks out kind of a dharma, materialistic religion, establishes the Parodharma, Savaipum Sam Parodharmo Yato Bhaktir Hoksajaya Haitaki Apatiyata Hayatma Suprasidati. So the Bhagavatam is establishing the Parodharma, the highest dharma. So it doesn't give as much stress to varnashram as pure devotional service. So it's not a fault on Prabhupada's part that he stressed pure devotional service and did not stress varnashram. Prabhupada didn't know how long he would live, so he wanted to teach the highest first. So he brought the Bhagavatam, which is the literary incarnation of Krishna. So in this purport, Prabhupada makes a very interesting point. Maharaj Yudhishthira, Krishna inspired Maharaj Yudhishthira to ask Bhishmadev in the presence of many great sages, indicating thereby that the Lord's devotee like Bhishmadev, although apparently living as a worldly man, is far superior to many great sages, even Vyasadeva. So it looks like Prabhupada says apparently Vyasadeva was living as a worldly man. So we might compare Vyasadeva to Vyasadeva. So Vyasadeva seems like much higher than Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva is the author of the Vedas. He's not a Kshatriya like Vyasadeva is a Kshatriya, and Kshatriyas have to get involved in politics, management. Sometimes they have to kill. Sometimes they have to have alliances, friendships and enemies. Whereas the great teachings of pure devotional service, like Prahlad Maharaj taught that one should become a pure devotee and not have the sense of friends and enemies. But Vishnudev had to take a side in the before the battle of Kurukshetra, and he sided with Duryodhana and the Kauravas. So it seems like Vishnudev was more involved in he was less he's inferior to Vyasadeva in some ways. Who can say, who hasn't any idea of how Vishnudev is superior to Vyasadeva? Well, one thing is,
One
what's that?
Lord Krishna came to when Bhismadeva was about to leave his body, and also Lord Krishna broke his promise
Yeah,
for Bhismadeva.
that's a good point. I mean, it's not a small thing that the Lord comes in person in his transcendental form at the time of death. I mean, the Lord is present in his holy name. You know, if we're fortunate, when we are leaving our bodies, the devotees will be chanting. So the Lord comes in the holy name, but he came to Vishnudev in person. That's a nice point. Yes, Ru.
one thing, so when Vyasadeva was attempting to help humanity and he was writing the Vedas, he didn't at first glorify devotional service, but when Yudhisthira came to Bhishmadev, the first thing he did was glorify the Lord and talk about devotional service. So maybe that's one way. He went straight to devotional service and he emphasized that as a devotee more than Vyasadeva did in the beginning.
Yeah, that's a good point. Vyasadeva, he at first in the Bhagavatam he was not Narada Muni, sort of chastised Vyasadeva for not teaching the pure devotional service and focusing on the pastimes of Krishna and the pure devotional service. It was an interesting thing. We read a little while ago about Ashwatthama, earlier in the chapter about Queen Kunti, we read about Ashwatthama. Ashwatthama, he, did kind of a very bad thing in killing the 5 sleeping boys, and he was punished after that to not be able to even die and just suffer and have a sore on his head that wouldn't heal. So a devotee said that, it says in the scriptures that for a really long time Ashwatthama would have to suffer. But then described, devotee said that in some Puranas it mentions that Ashwatthama will take the post of Vyasadeva in a future, I think a Dwapara Yuga or something. So, Srinivasacharya, I didn't realize Vyasadeva was a post, but Srinivasacharya also said yes, Vyasadeva is a post. So even someone like, I'm not finding fault with Ashwatthama because he's somehow associated with Krishna, so he's not an ordinary person, but he did do some activity that was not considered in the Shastras so nice. So it's saying that every saint has a past and every sinner has a future. So Ashwatthama, he had a bad period, but in one sense it's kind of nice that in Christianity they sometimes teach the idea that you can go to hell forever. But even someone like Ashwatthama got purified eventually of his, the activity that he did. So that was just one thought I had. Also it says in the very first verse of the Bhagavatam, it mentions that Viyanti Yat Suraya, by him even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion. So just being a sage or demigod doesn't mean you'll always be purely Krishna conscious. But Bhishmadev, one way I think he was very exalted was that he gave up ever getting married just to please his father. He gave up sense gratification. So if someone is describes in the Bhagavad Gita that Arjuna asks, what's the sign of a Stita Pragya, of the person fixed in Krishna consciousness? And the Lord says that he's free from the desire for sense gratification. He's given up sense gratification. So Bhishmadev certainly gave up sense gratification when he made that vow never to marry, which for Kshatriyas, the word Bhishma is said to mean a terrible vow. But it was a wonderful vow actually, in the sense that it showed how unselfish Bhishmadev was, and he was in a mood of service. And it was described that even his guru, Parashuram, wanted Bhishma to get married, but when he made that vow not to get married, he stuck to it, even though he went against his own guru in that sense. So Bhishmadev, he was very attached to Dharma, even though he was fighting for the wrong side in a sense with the Kauravas, but he had made a vow that he would protect the kingdom of Hastinapur. So he was following his vows and he was unselfish. And so Bhishmadev is one of the Mahajans. And there's a, if you could put on Bhagavatam Canto 2, 743. So Bhishma is known as one of the Mahajans, and in the second canto, Lord Brahma is telling Narada Muni about how some personalities get bewildered, but he's can you put the translation in? No, yeah. So can someone read the English for this? Can someone read the English?
O Narada, although the potencies of the Lord are unknowable and immeasurable, still, because we are all surrendered souls, we know how he acts through Yogamaya potencies. And, similarly, the potencies of the Lord are also known to all-powerful Shiva, the great king of the atheist family, namely Prahlad Maharaj, Swayambhuva Manu, his wife Satarupa, his sons and daughters like Priyavrata, Uttanapada, Akuti, Devahuti, and Prashuti, Prachanabarhi, Ribhu, Anga, the father, how do you say it? Anga, the father of Vena, Maharaj Dhruva, Ikshvalku, Aila, Muchakunda, Maharaj Janaka, Gadhi, Rahu, Ambarish, Sagara, Gaya, Nahusha, Mandhata, Alarka, Satadvane, Anu, Rantidev, Bhishma, Bali, Amuratraya, Dilipa, Surabhari, Uttanka, Shibi, Devala, Pipalad, Sarasvata, Udhava, Parashara, Burishena, Vibhishena, Hanuman, Shukadev Goswami, Arjuna, Artashena, Vidura, Shrutadev, etc.
Can you read the purport?
All the great devotees of the Lord, as mentioned above, who flourished in the past or present, and all the devotees of the Lord who will come in the future, are aware of the different potencies of the Lord, along with the potency of his name, quality, pastimes, entourage, personality, etc. And how do they know? Certainly it is not by mental speculation, nor by any attempt by dint of limited instruments of knowledge. By the limited instruments of knowledge, either the senses or the material instruments, like microscopes and telescopes, one cannot even fully know the Lord's material potencies, which are manifested before our eyes. For example, there are many millions and billions of planets far, far beyond the scientist's calculation, but these are only the manifestations of the Lord's material energy. What can the scientist hope to know of the spiritual potency of the Lord by such material efforts? Mental speculations, by adding some dozens of ifs and maybes, cannot aid in the advancement of knowledge. On the contrary, such mental speculations will only end in despair by dismissing the case abruptly and declaring the non-existence of God. The sane person, therefore, ceases to speculate on subjects beyond the jurisdiction of his tiny brain, and as a matter of course, he tries to learn to surrender unto the Supreme Lord, who alone can lead one to the platform of real knowledge. In the Upanishads, it is clearly said that the Supreme Personality of Godhead can never be known simply by working very hard and taxing the good brain, nor can he be known simply by mental speculation and jugglery of words. The Lord is knowable only by one who is a surrendered soul. Herein, Brahmaji, the greatest of all material living beings, acknowledges this truth. Therefore, the fruitless spoiling of energy by pursuing the path of experimental knowledge must be given up.
That's good. So these are all great devotees that it says they weren't bewildered by the illusory energy of the Lord. So we have the 7 Mahajans, but this list actually includes, I think, like 47 or quite a large number of devotees who describe that they understand the the yoga maya of the Lord, and they don't get bewildered. So Bhishmadev certainly was one of these, and other great ones like Vibhishan, who was serving under Ravan, but he actually went to serve Lord Ramachandra. So these are all great devotees that had different situations. In this list, there's some women devotees also. Shadarupa, Devahuti, and a few others are mentioned also as great devotees who weren't illusioned by the Lord's illusory energy. So, what's very great about Bhishmadev also is the example he set when he left his body. When one devotee passed away in Dallas, my Guru Maharaj asked me to write a book about their life and their death, which was very auspicious in terms of Krishna consciousness. There's a devotee named Kirtida, and when my Guru Maharaj, he was going to college and getting a PhD in religion in England in Cambridge University, and when his disciple passed away in Dallas, there's many examples in ISKCON of great devotees that passed away Krishna consciously. One of them is Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, and Radhanath Maharaj was with Bhakti Tirtha when he was leaving his body, and Bhakti Tirtha he had cancer and was suffering, but Radhanath Maharaj said, Bhakti Tirtha was in immense pain and asked me to speak about Lord Krishna, which according to him was the only real medicine. I started chanting the Hare Krishna mantra and his eyes became big. He had the expression of an innocent, simple little coward boy. He was gazing at me and chanting. He did something that no one ever did to me before. He took my hand and kissed it. And looking with his childlike eyes, he said, Maharaj, isn't this wonderful? He was shaking his head in ecstasy and had a beautiful blossom smile. He said, Maharaj, it doesn't get any better than this. I wouldn't exchange my place with anyone. And what's amazing is it gets better every day. So this great devotee was leaving his body, but he was in great ecstasy. So this is like Bhishmadev was leaving his body, but he was so composed that he gave so much wisdom and knowledge about even Varnashram. And so my Guru Maharaj, he asked me to write a book about her, and he was actually planning to write an article about this disciple. He felt that she went back to Godhead. So he was doing academic work, and he was asked to write an article in some book that a British scholar was writing. So he decided to write the article on the auspicious death, and he was going to develop the topic and use his disciple as an example. And so he had a book that was called Dying the Good Death by some scholar, which looked into God-conscious dying. And then it turned out that he passed away in an accident. So after that, one devotee was writing a book on death and dying in the world's major religions. So he asked, I had done a lot of research for the book that I wrote. So he asked me, he had a section on Christianity, Buddhism, even he had a devotee write on Krishna consciousness, and he wanted me to write on Hinduism. So I read some of these books on the scholars have written, and one scholar was talking about how, like, Bhishma was able to predict to leave his body when he willed. And one of the principles in the Vedic culture is that sometimes saintly persons have this ability to predict their time of death. So there's one saintly lady in our tradition, Pishima Goswamini. She was a saintly Gaudiya Vaishnava devotee, and when she was leaving the body in Vrindavan, she predicted, she left her body when she was 106 years old, and she predicted the exact day and time that she would leave her body. And this devotee in Dallas, she wanted to leave at the Brahma Muhurta hour, between 3 and 5 or 5:30 or something like that. And she also left her body at that time. And one scholar wrote, in Bhakti Yoga, so important, so absolute is seva, devotional service, that life, death, and any conditions in between do not come in the way of it. If one is living in seva, then it does not matter if one's death is ritually auspicious or not. So great devotees, they're in the mood of service. And there's some scholars were saying that people say they're not afraid of death, but everyone's afraid of death. But Bhakti Tirtha wasn't afraid of death, and so many devotees have died in Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada's name was Abhay Charan. Abhay means fearless. So there's a comedian named Woody Allen. He kind of made a joke. He said, "It's not that I'm afraid to die. I just don't want to be there when it happens." So he was, making a joke that he actually was afraid to die, but he's making a joke about it. But and there's a purport in the Bhagavad Gita 8:24 where Prabhupada says that in the purport of 8:24, he says that for a pure devotee doesn't, usually there's all these, in the Vedic culture there's so many things about auspicious death. But for a pure devotee, it doesn't matter whether I'll try to find the quote. Anyway, when I read some of the scholars, they found a lot of people in India, they go to Kashi to leave their bodies, and they usually fast near the end of their life. Describes that it's easier for the soul to go out of the body when they fast. And 84% of the people that went to one ashram where people go to leave their bodies in Kashi, 84% of them left their body within 1 week. So they weren't afraid of death. They were. I think in that place it said that Lord Shiva, when someone dies, Lord Shiva is chanting the holy names of the Lord in their ear when they're leaving their body. So many people go there and they're not afraid of death in the same way that so many people are in the Western world. But there's all these and Prabhupada didn't want to die in a hospital because some scholars wrote when people die in hospitals, those outside the hospital are protected from the sights of death. Sudner demonstrated that among hospital staff, efficiency is more highly valued than human dignity. Caregivers are often not comfortable dealing with death, and as a result they handle the dying patients quite poorly. One scholar argued that hospitals are committed to the recovery process, not to dying. So, Prabhupada didn't want to die in a hospital. He told his disciples, if I'm getting ready to leave my body, don't have me in a hospital. I want to be around the devotees who are chanting and in a spiritual environment. So there's all these texts on ideal passing. But it may or may not be possible to do all the ideal things. One scholar wrote, neither death nor the abode of hell is feared by the devotee. On the contrary, it is a heaven-like abode from which no man is born again that a devotee anticipates after death. Vishnu's heavenly abode is called Vaikuntha, and Shiva's sphere is called Kailash. Therefore, whichever sectarian Purana one reads, the outcome is the same. Yama's messengers are defeated by the soldiers of the Supreme Deity, and the naked soul of the devotee is carried off to that deity's heavenly abode. So Prabhupada gave the analogy of a cat. The difference between a devotee's death and an ordinary man's death. In her mouth, the cat captures both her offspring and her prey, the rat. Such capturings may appear the same, but there is a vast difference between them. While the rat is being carried in the cat's mouth, his sensation is poles apart from that of the cat's offspring. For the rat, the capture is painful, death-like strike, while for the offspring it is a pleasurable caress. So, it's easy to say all this stuff, but at the time of death, it's like an examination. So when this devotee asked me if I would help write a chapter in the book, I said, well, I'm an expert at death because I've died thousands of times in ignorance. So I consider myself an expert at death and dying. And I'm trying to be a devotee, but I'm not a very good devotee, but I can intellectually, study about death. But in this verse we read today, Prabhupada said that Bhishmadev was showing that a real advanced devotee is Krishna conscious even at the time of death, in control of their mind and senses, even though the body is going through so much devastation. But a great devotee is, like Srila Prabhupada was translating the Bhagavatam right up near practically the end of his life. He was translating the Bhagavatam, and Bhakti Tirtha was fully Krishna conscious, and the devotee in Dallas was a wonderful example also. So, does anybody have any comments or questions?
That about Prabhupada's mentioning he doesn't want to leave his body in hospital, but we cannot generalize it. Bhishma could not have transferred with so much arrows into the hospital. Vaidya came there to treat him, whatever necessary in the previous time. But in the modern age, if you see, Bhakticharu Maharaj also left his body in the hospital. There was one more devotee from Detroit, I don't forget there. The ICCU made into a devotional, it is a temple they made. They were chanting everything, and that moment she left the body. So we don't know actually when our time comes. So many times doctors also help, not that doctor only take away the body. So they may survive another 10 years or 20 years, we don't know.
Yeah, for a very sincere devotee, it doesn't matter whether they leave in a hospital, but it's helpful if they don't. It's not in the hospital. The death is a defeat. They try to keep people alive, and whereas in the Vedic culture, death is just a necessary change of body, and it's not the enemy. And so they try to keep the consciousness of the person, Krishna conscious. And there are places in India where people go to die, and they're kept clean, and there's chanting going on, and they try to give them the right, the best environment as they're leaving their body, the most Krishna conscious. And Giri Raj Maharaj started a hospice in Vrindavan, for just to help devotees. And Shiva Niramadava Ki. But it says in the scriptures that dying in an accident is not auspicious, but it says that Prabhupada says if one is performing devotional service, but if they die in an accident, it doesn't matter. So, I mean, Tamal Krishna Maharaj died in an accident. But it says in the scriptures that for advanced devotees, it doesn't matter. I mean, they're doing service when they're living, they're doing service when they're dying, and it's all up in Krishna's hands. So we might die at auspicious place and time. We might die in a hospital at 2 in the morning when there's no devotees around, and the tape machine goes off and the chanting is not going on. But if Krishna can help us. Krishna's all powerful, so if we have surrendered to Him, but if we can control the environment the maximum, make it Krishna conscious, as devotees do so often for dying devotees, it helps so much. It's such wonderful service. And we have hospitals like Bhaktivedanta Hospital in Mumbai that they have Prabhupada Murti in the hospital. They have kirtan tapes and lectures that patients can listen to. So they're taking care of their body and their soul, and so but
All right, Krishna Prabhu, thank you for the class. Can you talk about how Bhishma Dev, what were you thinking? How is Bhishma Dev superior to Vasudeva?
how what?
How Bhishma Dev is superior to Vyasudeva? In what ways?
Well, I mean, I tried to say that Vyasadeva is the post, so some people, as far as I know, Bhishma Dev is an individual that's not a post. I tried to say that some person that became Vyasadeva was not so perfect, but in a certain way, Bhishma Dev was perfect because he was totally unselfish. He gave up married life just because his father wanted to enjoy, and he was great follower of Dharma. He had, even though he was on the wrong side, he had vowed to fight for the Hastinapur, so he was following that vow. He's one of the great Mahajans, and so some of the saintly persons, it says in the Bhagavatam, in the first canto, it says that some of the sages the Lord bewilders the sages and demigods, but Bhishma wasn't bewildered at the time of death. He was giving transcendental knowledge and material knowledge of varnashram, and he was Krishna conscious, and Krishna came to be with him at the time. Prabhupada said, don't try to see Krishna, try to act such a way that Krishna wanted to see you. So Krishna glorifies his great devotees, like he came right to be with Vishnudev. He came as Lord Chaitanya to be with Haridas Thakur at the time of his passing. So we don't have any knowledge of Krishna coming to Vyasadeva at the end of his life. I mean, maybe it happened, I don't know, but Prabhupada says in the purport today that Bhishma Dev was superior to different sages. So I was trying to think of a few ways that he was, and I asked you all also. So these are a few ways that he was a special devotee and Krishna reciprocated with him. And as you mentioned, Vyasadeva was a little illusioned at times. not, not knowing the highest, or not teaching the highest thing. So that was one of the points that Prabhupada made in the purport. Okay. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki.